attorney and a couple other an assemblyman. What do you think that he may be able to make a real run for it?
Time will tell. I think everybody has a chance. It's early in the campaign, so I don't think you can exclude anyone.
What about Steve Kuykendall?
What to see? Well, I don't know. I'm hearing that he's struggling, but we'll find out at the end of the month, or I'm sorry, at the end of the quarter. Then we'll know where everybody is. At this point, either campaigns get momentum by the end of the year or they don't. So I had the most momentum at the end of the first quarter, at the end of September. Now, time will tell. Will I still have the same, level of momentum at the end of the year? Will I be far ahead of the competitors, or will they have caught up with me? We'll see.
On November 22nd was one of the presidential Republican debates, and Newt Gingrich made a really interesting comment about immigration. What he said was, quote, I don't see how the party, meaning the Republican Party, that says it's the party of the family is going to adopt an immigration policy which destroys families which have been here a quarter of a century. What are your thoughts on that? Well, on immigration and people who have been living here illegally for several years or decades? Yes.
Well, first of all, I think I agree with Newt that our existing immigration policy is broken. And I think there's three things we need to do. First of all, we do need to secure our borders, because no matter what we change internally, if they're porous and we keep having all the illegal immigrants come in these huge, significant numbers, it's going to be very difficult to deal with that, particularly in today's economic climate. So we do need to strengthen our borders. Having said that, though, there are a certain amount of people here. They've resided here for a long time. They're going to continue to reside here. Pretending they don't exist is crazy. So we need to give them, if it's not a path to citizenship, at least we have to give them a path to a work visa, something. We've got to legitimize their residency. And they're sending their kids to school here, and they are paying taxes. I mean, they're buying things, they're paying sales tax. So, I mean, they are contributing in that way. I think we need to get them above the radar and become productive members of society and the economy.
Well, wouldn't that be a form of amnesty? I mean, isn't that what Republicans don't want, is some sort of blanket, green light for people, even though they've lived here, and it's still illegal in their mind, and that would be, inappropriate, or sort of a blanket amnesty sort of situation?
Well, I think amnesty might be the ultimate, but I would say let's take some paths along the way first. Let's see how it works out. Like I said, I'm far more supportive of let's give them a path to getting a work permit. Right. That they're here legally in a work visa and a job, as opposed to they're working under the table for cash with no identification. Okay. For those that are here and they're going to remain here, why wouldn't we want them to have a driver's license? Why wouldn't we want them to have car insurance? Why wouldn't we want them to make those choices that the rest of us need to make?
Okay. What about abortion? How do you feel about abortion? Most Republicans are pro-life. What's your stance on it?
I'm pro-choice.
You're pro-choice.
I am.
Now,
and that's the law of the land. I mean, that is where it is today, and I think that's where it needs to stay.
Aren't you taking a big risk being a Republican, running in a Orange County, partly Orange County, congressional district, and saying that you're pro-choice?
Candidly, I think that's one of those polarizing issues. I mean, I think the parties, Republicans and Democrats, we need to stay away from that. I don't think, if you talk to most people, what's your number one or number two or number three or number five concern for your family, for the country, that's one of them. So Why don't we work together on the things that really matter most to people, get those things solved, and then maybe we'll have some time left over for those other discussions.
And let's fix the economy. If you do lose votes because of the abortion issue alone, where do you think you would lose those votes?
Well, but again, I'm a moderate, so if you're saying, well, you're going to lose some votes from the very far conservative right, yeah, I think that's probably true. Okay. But that's not who I am. I'm a very moderate person.
Tell us, if you were to be elected Congressman for the 47th District, what bills would you introduce in the first 90 days?
I don't think I would introduce anything in the first 90 days, and I would be suspicious of anybody that did, right? Because you really don't want me to come in there with some political agenda that I'm trying to get done. But certainly from the first day, I would work at getting our budget into balance and getting our economy working again. I would get that on the first day, the second day, the third day, and for every day of the first 100 days and then beyond, because that's what's important and that's what needs to be fixed.
So is there any positions that you would take that are contrary to Long Beach City Hall's legislative agenda?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you're elected to represent your constituents, and part of your constituency are the cities you represent. And candidly, while I might have my preferences, once the city council goes through its process to determine its federal legislative agenda and submits it, it's the congressional representative's job to make it happen. And that would be true for Long Beach or for any other city that I would represent.
Right. Okay. Gregory Hessler on Facebook had a question for you. Would you favor raising the income tax rates on the ultra wealthy until the debt is paid down to a more manageable level?
Well, I would tell you that that wouldn't be the first two things I would do, because the first thing I would do is I would reduce the size of government, because as we talked earlier, it's doubled in 10 years. So problem number one is you got to shrink government to save costs. Then number two, you need to grow the economy. So we need to support the private sector. We need to grow the economy, generate tax revenue. Now, if you've cut the government to a manageable size and you've grown the economy and that's on a healthy rate, and you're still lacking in funding, would I look at additional tax revenue? Sure, I think you have to look at it. I mean, I think one of the reasons that we have this polarization and gridlock now is because people are unwilling to compromise. They're unwilling to find consensus. So while I would consider that, I got to be honest with you, it wouldn't be my first choice. I think we need to do the other two things first. And when you've done that, if you're still not there, then you have to have an open mind.
Okay. Rick and David McGilton-McGlamory on Facebook asked this question. How would you vote on issues concerning gay equality, like, for instance, gay marriage? How do you feel about that?
Well, I guess what I would tell you is that I have a large constituency today from the community, and I've always voted in support of their objectives as a Long Beach City Council member, and I would expect to continue to do so as their congressional representative, because then again, I represent everybody.
So should gays be allowed to be married?
I think it's appropriate. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you think maybe you'll lose some votes on that one? I mean, Republicans don't necessarily like the whole gay marriage idea.
Yes, I'm sure that I will lose some votes on that, but that doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do.
Okay. What about term limits? Jim Dano from Facebook asks, Gary, what is your position on term limits for congressmen?
Well, you know, I'm going to be wishy-washy on that, and I'll tell you why. As a local elected official here in Long Beach, I strongly support term limits. I think they're wonderful. I think 2 terms, 8 years is more than sufficient, so I'm a strong supporter of term limits. On the other hand, I've never been in Sacramento, but as I understand it from those people that are very familiar, term limits are terrible. Term limits have resulted in many of the problems that we have today with people not being able to work together, not being able to get things done, the state legislature being so dysfunctional, the leadership just doing so poorly, the ownership of the public unions owning our elected officials. So term limits have been bad in Sacramento. So the answer is I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know in Washington. If it's more like Long Beach, where I think term limits are good, yes, I would support it. If I think it's going to make things worse like it is in Sacramento, then I would be opposed. But candidly, I don't know that I would know until I get there and figure it out. But I'm open to it.
What as far as the things that we've already discussed, beyond those, is there anything else that's really important to you that you want to get done in Washington?
No, I would say, again, fix the economy, get growth going. I guess the two things that I would actually probably increase spending on is infrastructure. Okay. I mean, you look back at what President Eisenhower accomplished in the 50s when he built the coast-to-coast, interstate highway system. Where are those kinds of visions? You look in the 60s when President Kennedy started the space program, look at those accomplishments. We don't have any of those today, and I think we should be investing in our future and for our kids' future. So I would like to see more money being invested in infrastructure for long-term benefits. And the other thing I think we need to do is I think we need to reform our education system. I think our education system is broken.
Long Beach Unified laid off almost 800 people, most of them teachers, in June.
Right. Yes, they have.
And increased class size.
And higher education is getting beat up as well. I mean, to give you an example, I have a kindergartner. I have kindergartner to college students, but our kindergartner that started earlier this year, we always thought that she would be in Long Beach Unified and that's where she'd get her education. Yes, she's there for kindergarten, but we're on the 1-year plan. She has a good year, we'll renew for first grade. She has another good year, we'll renew to second grade. But I got to tell you, based on the budget cuts that are coming, because of the way that the state legislature is so mismanaging the budget up there, I think it's unlikely that she will finish in Long Beach Unified. I think the quality of our educational system has the potential to deteriorate pretty significantly, and she won't be able to go there. We won't be able to afford to keep her in public schools. We'll put her in a private school. And I think that will be very detrimental to Long Beach and other communities. So education is certainly a passion of mine.
And Long Beach would lose it's called ADA, but the money that they get for students. what's going to happen if people who have means pull their students out of Long Beach?